Okay, welcome back everybody. I hope you enjoyed your coffee. Now we'll continue. So, as we all know, it is vital to include different stakeholders in the policy discussions. And this is why next we are going to hear from the business side in a session called Business Talk, followed by a session that gives us the science perspective. So I will now introduce and hand over to Mr. Derek Nybor, who is the moderator for the Business Talk. Derek is the President and CEO of the Forest Products Association of Canada. It's all yours.
Thank you, Tina, and Your Excellencies and guests. Thanks for giving us space for some private sector perspectives. And my name is Derek Nybor. I'm President and CEO of the Forest Products Association of Canada. I also have the privilege of being the business and industry representative to the United Nations Forum on Forests, and I'm an active member of the International Council of Forest and Paper Associations and the ACSFI. And I want to just start by thanking the organizers, Government of Austria, Government of South Africa, the team at FAO, which have been just excellent. And also, as a Canadian right now, these multilateral discussions, these international collaborations are so critically important to our success in Canada and to our shared success around the world. And I come to a gathering like this, and it's often the side meetings. I had a good meeting with Alexander Buck and his team at IUFRO on Friday. I see my colleague Mia Crawford, fellow major group from farmers and small landowners here. So just a wonderful opportunity to connect with friends from around the world. I'd also like to recognize Juliette Biao and the UNFF Secretariat and the team there for their leadership in advancing the bioeconomy agenda. We heard the Finnish minister speak in her opening about creating value, and value is not just economic value, which is critically important to our economies, but also social value, environmental value. And I'm excited about this panel today because I think we cross about 5 continents, maybe 6, 5 for sure, representing different parts, very unique businesses, different parts of the value chain, some different perspectives. So today, I think what we're hoping to do here is to bring some different experiences and some sharing of challenges and opportunities from different parts of the world, from different parts of the value chain. And hopefully some of this discussion will feed into other discussions over the next couple of days so we can, when we leave here on Wednesday, we have some actionable next steps. And something that I'm always, when I'm working as a Canadian in these international efforts, how can I make this work land when I get back home? And I really hope today that some of this discussion here, we feed into that and we can all go back to our respective countries and affect positive change at home. So I'm going to start with Nicolas Koch-Duquet from Ecoflora Cares. Nicolas is a Colombian, quite an accomplished entrepreneur. 25 years of his career has spread various parts of agri-food and the biotech and nature-based solutions. So, Nicola, I'll give you 3 minutes maybe to talk a bit about yourself, talk a bit about Ecoflora Cares, and maybe some of the kind of good practices and whatnot that you can share with the group.
Thank you very much, Derek. And I'm very honored with this invitation. Good morning, everyone. Forests are not only resources for our economies, they are living systems that make our economies, our climate, and life itself possible. And we must begin to treat them accordingly. We gather here to move from fragmented initiatives toward systemic transformation of the forest-based bioeconomy. The knowledge and partnerships already exist. The challenge now is scaling inclusive and resilient value chains. I speak from a segment of the bioeconomy that goes beyond timber, transforming forest biodiversity into industrial inputs that replace fossil-based and artificial materials across global supply chains. I lead Ecoflora, a Colombia-based biosolutions company operating at industrial scale. We operate under the principles of certified B corporations, and we are proud members of the Union for Ethical Biotrade, finding the Nagoya Protocol an instrumental element of our work. Colombia, the most biodiverse country on earth per square meter, is a living pharmacy of opportunities. This biodiversity has been safeguarded for generations by indigenous peoples and Afro-Colombian communities who act as their custodians. Our responsibility is to translate this biological wealth into regenerative and inclusive economic systems that strengthen those custodians. A structural shift is now underway. In markets such as the United States, regulatory momentum is accelerating the removal of artificial colors from food systems. Demand for safe, natural, and traceable alternatives already exceeds sustainable supply. For decades, one barrier limited adoption, the absence of a stable, natural blue color. And blue is a primary color. Without it, the natural palette remains incomplete. The missing holy grail has been an acid-stable blue capable of performing under industrial conditions. Using Genipa americana, Jagua, or Huito, Ecoflora has developed and scaled the world's first acid-stable natural blue colorant, protected by our intellectual property and patents, and now globally validated, including FDA authorization and positive scientific opinions from EFSA and Codex. And there's been more spaceships travel to the moon than natural colors being approved by EFSA. This enables multinational companies to replace synthetic dyes at industrial scale. This is more than color innovation, it's a systemic innovation. By creating high-value markets for biodiversity-derived ingredients, we generate net positive impact across the value chain, protecting and regenerating tropical ecosystems, strengthening climate resilience through regenerative land use, and creating stable income for farmers, transitioning cattle ranchers, and custodial indigenous and Afro-Colombian communities. To scale this transition, we must align regulation, finance, and industry around nature-based solution supply chains, and recognize biodiversity-derived solutions as strategic industrial inputs for a low-carbon economy. When we remember that we are not separate from nature, but part of it, the forest-based bioeconomy stops being just an economic transition and becomes a pathway back to balance between people, planet, and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola, for that. And we'll move from color and food to mass timber construction, and I think that shows the breadth of this panel today. And Christoph Kulturer is the CEO of Hoslar Group, which is a glue laminated timber global company. I think 10 sites, 5 countries, 2,000 employees. and very near and dear to the hearts of Canadians because they just made an over $100 million Canadian dollar investment in Southern Ontario. So a very popular company that a lot of people are watching, and maybe I'll invite you, Christophe, to tell your story.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very honored to speak to you today. I come from a business that is 125 years old and was founded by my great-grandfather, and I'm now in the fourth generation. And that is the true story of sustainability, and we actually harvest the trees that my great-grandfather has planted. But let me start with something very simple. Without a reliable supply of wood, there is no forest-based economy. And that is also where policy meets practice. And in many current debates, forests are mainly seen as a place to store carbon and protect nature. That is also important, but science tells us a more complete story. So young and actively managed forests absorb more CO2 than old, very dense and unmanaged forests. Their growth is faster and the carbon uptake is much higher in the initial phase of a forest. And if the forests are left to themselves, wood becomes deadwood and then slowly rots and the carbon is released back to the atmosphere. So with sustainable managed forests, we harvest the trees when the growth is at its peak. We use the wood and we create space for new trees to grow and start the cycle over again. And studies show that over the long term, the climate mitigation potential of sustainably managed forests is many times higher than that of forests taken out of management. And that brings me to the advanced forest-based value chain and building the future with wood. When we use wood from sustainably managed forests for buildings and other long-lasting products, the carbon stays in these products for decades, and even for centuries if we recycle these products and use it in a cascading way. And this way we can create a second forest where the first forest is regrowing. And at the end of the life cycle, we can use these products also for energy and reducing the dependency on fossil fuels. And also in modern integrated wood industries, we use everything from the tree, 100%, and there is no waste. We use the bark to create the energy, electricity, and heat we need to produce the lumber. So it's really a circular economy. And that is exactly how the private sector can turn the natural capital of our forests into economic value. We can create rural jobs and also the climate benefits. But to deliver this, we need a policy framework that recognizes the need for active forest management, and we need a balanced approach. We need areas where nature can develop freely, but we also need large areas where forests are actively and sustainably managed to use the tree and the wood as a basis for a growing bioeconomy. And that is not a contradiction, it's a smart resource policy. So the private forest sector is ready to invest in climate-resilient forest conversion, in more diverse forests and in modern processing. But investors also need predictability. Clear long-term signals that sustainable harvesting remains possible and welcome. Otherwise, the capital will move elsewhere. And if policy and practice work together, we can keep forests as strong carbon sinks, and at the same time, we can store more carbon in the timber products, and most of all, we can substitute fossil energy. So the private sector is ready. Give us the right framework, and we will turn vision into value, and true to our motto, from wood to wonders. Thank you.
Thank you, Christophe. So I think we saw Yuko nodding a lot during those remarks, so it's a perfect segue to go to Yuko Izuka from Sumitomo Forestry in Japan. Yuko's been with Sumitomo since 2012 and has a really broad base of experience from government relations to investor relations and public relations. And across the Pacific Ocean and Canada, we know you as being one of the leading minds when it comes to ESG and natural capital solutions. So it's a pleasure to see you in person today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm from Japan, where the oldest wooden structure is still standing from 1,400 years ago, Horyuji Temple. So Christoph said it all what I wanted to say, but let me add something. So my company's history goes back to 17th century. So when the Sumitomo family found a rich copper mine in Japan and then obtained the rights to mine. So timber for construction and for fuel to smelt the copper, wood and forest is indispensable for the operation. So our ancestors were sourcing wood, but from surrounding mountains. And Japan, as you know, is a very hilly archipelago country. So in Japan, that mountains and forests are almost like interchangeable. So in late 19th century, that the surrounding mountains were devastated by excessive logging and smoke pollutions. So significant number of casualties by flash floods in the mountain, all the crops damaged by the pollution in the field. So as a business, benefited from the natural resources, copper. So back then, the principal of the operation decided we need to restore the devastated mountain. So we, not me, but our ancestors planted over 2 million seedlings per year, investing more money than the profit from the copper mining operation. So we learned a lesson in a hard way, but it's very important how the sustainability of the business and operation is in place. So ever since that, plant, nurture, harvest, and use, and then replant, this cyclical, sustainably managed forest is the key for our business. So currently that we own and manage forests in Japan, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and through forest funds that are in Canada and the United States. And also that we do manufacture wooden products, and also we do trade timber. We source from Christoph. And also that we do build wooden detached houses, 30,000 units annually in Japan, Australia, and in the United States. And we are also into non-residential, larger mass timber buildings in the United States and here in Europe as well. So we call this, value chain as a wood cycle. So because our company is involved in forestry and trading and manufacturing and also construction, and we do also have 6 wooden biomass power generation plants in Japan. So basically, we do all the value chain by ourselves. So when it comes to construction, that Christoph said it all, how it's so important to substitute other construction materials to wood, but construction actually uses half the natural resources globally, and also does emit almost 40% of global GHG emission from construction sector. So when the 70% of those GHG coming from operational carbons like these through occupancy, but the rest of the 30% comes from embodied carbon, which is extracting raw materials and from processing, manufacturing, and also construction, and through the demolition at end of life. So eventually, that's the GHG from the operational carbon will be declined through the renewable energy, but this embodied carbon remains. So it's very important because half the building standing in 2050 will be constructed from now on. So what kind of building we're gonna build from now, it's very important. So, and every participant in this room knows that how it's important we use, bio-based forest-derived, wood products for the substitution effect, but not any timber, because as everybody mentioned about all these communities, and then 1.6 billion people live 5 kilometers within the forest area. So the local communities being affected, and also that these nature positive and all the nature loss happening in the forest. So it's very important that we pay attention to this, biodiversity. So if we only speak about forest and timber through carbon lens, that is not enough. So it has to be through this community and also other ecosystem services that forests provide. Clean water, clean air, and also rich soil and sediment retention, and also that's, the habitat for the biodiversity. So we all know that there is the answer, the forest-based sustainably biomaterial is a key, but we don't have the, commonly agreed upon measurement protocol to prove that how these, timbers are good, not just through carbon, but for the other parts. So Sumitomo Forestry is now a member of International Sustainable Forestry Coalition, ISFC. And we just announced at the last COP that how 18 forestry companies gonna do in a unified way. We own and manage 23 million hectares of forest in 38 countries. And then if one company just say, according to my method, this is my value, but it's very important when we speak to stakeholders, especially for the financial sector, that it's an agreed upon unified approach to measure these ecosystem services. So, so forest sector is striving, and then how to capture these value of the natural capital of forests. So we are planning to announce the result at the next COP. So we are currently struggling how to agree upon all these measurement process, but I 100% agree to Christoph, and then this part I just added my story. Thank you.
Thanks, Yuko. Great examples of international collaboration with companies and some competitors from around the world, which is always great to see. I'm going to now ask Ashish Malik, who's with Olam Agri. Ashish is based in Switzerland, but has a global mandate and when it comes to forest and wood products trade. And I know in forestry valuation and international trade systems, you're an expert with over 15 years of experience doing that work. So I'll maybe ask you to introduce yourself to the group, introduce your business, and maybe talk a little bit about some of the opportunities as you see them.
Yeah, thank you, Derek, for the introduction. So my name is Ashish. So I manage the global operations of forestry and wood products for Olam Agri. Just as a background, I do have varied forestry experience in different parts of the world, and from my personal experience, I can say that when forestry is practiced in a sustainable and climate resilient way, or in a nature positive way, you do see impact not only on the climate part, but also on the communities which are living around the forest. As some of my distinguished panelists have mentioned, the nature part of it and the climate part of the forestry, I would like to give certain examples of how, in our experience as Olam Agri, we have been able to see and witness the growth of the communities and the society in general because of the forest. So first, as a perspective, what we do today is we manage around 2.1 million hectares of FSC and PEFC certified forests in Republic of Congo. To compare, we talk about something around 1/4 of the size of Austria. So it's a huge responsibility. And since 60 years, the organization has been managing this forest in a sustainable way under the charter of the Sustainable Forest Management of Republic of Congo, but also the international certification standards of FSC and PEFC. So we conserve around 40% of our forest, and we do manage different REDD+ projects within that locality of the forest that we manage. And then our products are basically going into different end uses. One of it was shown in the film at the start of the conference, where the lock gates in Netherlands are made out of certified tropical hardwoods. And then there are some very niche and specific uses like guitars, which most of the renowned musicians have played out of timber coming out of Congo. So in terms of scalability of the impact, if a sustainable forest where we are looking at resource not only from one harvesting cycle, but we talk about 3, 4, or 5 harvesting cycles over a period of 150 to 200 years. So what we have seen in last 60 years, a community which was only 60 inhabitants, 60, after 60 years of sustainable forest management, we talk about a thriving city of 25,000 inhabitants. So when we talk about scalability and investment in sustainable forestry under sustainable forest management principles, we are not only talking about corporate profits, we are also talking about how we give it back to the society. So it can be through healthcare access, and it can be drinking water for 60,000 inhabitants every day. Or we talk about 10 or 12 different kinds of schools where indigenous people can go and aspire for their kids to have a decent education. The second impact, I think it was touched both by Christophe as well as Juko on the cyclical nature of our forest industry. So similar to what Christophe mentioned in their manufacturing facilities in Austria, when we talk about timber as a resource, we try to use 100% of the resource by using the waste wood to fire fired power plants. Today, we are proud to say that we can save annually around 10 to 12 million liters of fuel, which otherwise in a remote location we would need to have power coming from diesel-generated generators. But because of the new technologies and our investments, which led to cyclical nature of timber production. So I think just to give you a complete picture of what can be possible in terms of private sector investment going in for sustainable forestry, wherein the private sector in the consuming markets, be it Europe, UK, US, or Asia, where people are ready to pay premiums for a sustainable timber and differentiate with against illegal, or let's say a timber which is harming the environment, good things can come about. So just to conclude and handing over to my other panelist, we feel that private sector investment, when ably supported by the policies, ably supported by the consuming countries or consumers, it can bring in sustainable profits, but also sustainable thriving conditions for the communities living around the forest. So thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. Meltem Kurtsan from Turkey. Maybe the only pharmacist in the building today, I'm not sure, but she's a pharmacist by trade, but a well-known and well-respected entrepreneur. And I've learned a lot from her in the couple calls that we've done and in reading about aromatherapy and herbal, as CEO of Herba Farms. I know in Canada it's not a natural industry in the forest sector, but I think that's the beauty of these meetings in terms of understanding other products and other potential markets. So, given your experience, your entrepreneurship, and your understanding of that herbal aromatherapy space, it would be great to learn a little bit from your perspectives about what you see and some of the opportunities before us.
Thank you. Yes, I am pharmacist, and I had my master's degree in phytotherapy, aromatherapy, and homeopathy. So, for me, as a pharmacist, forests means a lot to me because we resource all healthy herbs, essential oils, food supplements from the forests. Mainly. Of course, there are cultivations as well, but forests create us health in the world. Regarding my country, Turkey, is very rich with its plant species, because we have different climate in our country, 7 different climate differences, which makes very rich flora and fauna. If I give you some examples that you will all know what is coming from forest, not to Turkey only, but to the world. Like laurel, thyme, oregano, linden, carob, cedar wood, juniper. They are all coming from the forests. So they are all good for our well-being and for our health. So for me, the forests are not only timber, it is our health benefit from the nature. So it is very important to protect our forests wherever they are, and to continue to use for these raw materials for our human being health. Me, I born to a pharmacist family, because they were the first generation, my father and my mother were first generation of herbal medicine, herbal cosmetics, and food supplements production. It was 70 years before, and we continue it to grow, also produce for Turkey and for export purposes. I know you are the experts of forestry here, but I think that this perspective will give you a richness to look to the subject. So, thank you so much.
So I think just in the last 15, 20 minutes or so, I want to get into, at the beginning I talked about making sure the work that we do here today can be used when we all go back home. And as we think about that co-chair statement on Wednesday, I think what we wanted this panel to do today was to demonstrate the willingness, the ability, the expertise that is across the private sector to work with you to be agents for good and to bring about opportunities not only for the economy, but for the environment and for society as a whole. How can we scale up these innovations, the investments to make more of this happen? How can we help maybe advance the discussion over the next couple of days with some ideas? So I know folks are still going to be around. Most people will be around for the next day or two for any individual question. But maybe one of the things I'll ask each of the panelists just in a minute or two, maybe talk about some of those barriers to overcome. I know, we talk about the interconnectedness of the supply chain and the opportunity. And I see Greg Smith from Government of Canada here, and we're working a lot on trying to figure out how do we maximize the use of residuals. So my example would be, we have real barriers because Canada's a big country. It's expensive to move fiber across long distances. We've got a lot of great ideas about what to do with the residuals, but we can't always make the economics work. So that's a big issue that's a barrier we're trying to overcome in Canada. Maybe Nicola, from your perspective, any barriers, whether they be, across multiple jurisdictions or maybe specific to a region, any examples just to paint a picture? And I know you mentioned one in your opening statement, but maybe to put a point on a barrier.
Sure. Well, actually, I'd like to emphasize 3 briefly. One is the insufficient public policies and fragmented regulations to stimulate and accelerate the adoption of bio-based materials. To give you an example, it took us from 12 to 15 years to achieve the Codex approval for our natural blue color, and it was pretty much the same time for the FDA approval, for EFSA approval, and now we we have to go into national phases for separate and individual regulations on a per country basis in many countries. Second, insufficient funding and capital flowing into startups and private companies that can untap the economic potential of forest-based economies and new products development. And third, the pace at which multinational companies, consumer good companies, are adopting these bio-based solutions. It's crucial to accelerate this adoption and the transition from artificial, synthetic, high carbon dependent inputs into bio-based solutions.
Christoph, you're in an industry that's in expansion mode and building codes and embodied carbon and a lot of things happening out there that are very, supportive of the scale up. But any barriers that you see the need to overcome?
So I think wood as a building material has been recognized in many places now. I mean, there's still some work to do with, acceptance, fire regulation, and so on. But as I mentioned before, I think the key for the industry, the thriving bioeconomy, is really the availability of raw material. And in that aspect, we fear that some of the concepts we see today in LULUCF or the nature restoration law in Europe, that they will put away a significant part of the raw material, which in the end makes our industry less competitive, and we once again move to to industries that are more fossil-based. So we need to find this equilibrium between nature protection and also availability of raw material. And that this is not a contradiction, I think Austria is a very good example. We can be very proud that Austria has a strong forestry-based industry. We export our products all across the world. We have a lot of innovation and a very high efficient industrial use. But at the same time, in the past 50 years, the forest stock in Austria has increased by 50%. So it is possible with the right forestry laws. And I'm convinced that if we can roll out this model throughout Europe and through other parts in the world, we can have a very thriving bioeconomy sector.
Thank you. Yuko, I know you're involved in a lot of the global nature-based solutions discussions, and you have a global mandate as well. Anything you wanted to maybe add to what Christoph said?
Thank you. So global alignment is very important. That how that, of course, each country and each sector and each region has different background or different expertise. But if we need to report, different based on different standards, and it's going to be too much for us, for private sector, and also that there's this famous saying that you can't manage what you can't measure. So it's very important what kind of measurement protocol that we're going to all agree and have one. So of course that these nature and natural capitals are such a complex matter, and then it's not that simple, but it's very important that we can approach a holistical approach, not just by carbon, or not just like bioeconomy, or not just nature positive, not just one by one, but in a holistical way. And then it's very important that we all talk, and then how we can agree upon global aligned measurement protocol. So it's not easy, but we can all try, and then unless we come up with the approach that the financial sector is going to always ask a simple black and white, kind of answer. So, but we need to be science-based, but not too much detail, and it has to be a usable and feasible way of measuring who we are and how we are managing our own forest, and then what are the values coming out from it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ashish, did you want to pick up on that in terms of some of the maybe barriers to overcome or opportunities?
Yes, so I think I'd like to bucket it in probably three parts, and they're all correlated, supply side, demand side, and the policy side. So what we strongly feel is that with growing population in the supply side, and if you talk about Africa, where a lot of sustainable timber supply is going to come and is currently also coming. But when you have more and more people around the forest, that means your social obligation is expected to increase. So the kind of taxes that we generate for the supply side stakeholders, they are not going to be sufficient in case the timber pricing, where I'm linking it to the market side, remains the same. So when we talk about how sustainability-linked premiums, and it can be environmental certifications or it can be carbon-related metrics, environmental product declaration. So all these things combined, how do we encourage consumers to pay premiums for timber or a building material which is produced rightfully? So I think that's where the supply and demand balance needs to come. And on the policy side, what we feel is that a consistency of the policy needs to be there, and in terms of implementation, in terms of enforcement. So probably an example of recent delays that are happening in EUDR, the European Union Deforestation Regulation. So now, as an operator or as a stakeholder in both the market and the supply side, an uncertainty just creates an access for less responsible timber to be coming in developed markets. And it's not only EUDR, how do we kind of justify equal footing regulations for all the countries where timber is flowing in? And lastly, what Yuko kind of hinted, when we are not only talking about carbon, we need to look at an holistic carbon biodiversity space. Today, the markets are actually not there while we talk about huge numbers. But if we have to motivate countries to protect 40, 50% of their forest, to have sustainable forestry plans, today the alternate of funding or finance available for protecting the forest does not justify the protection. So in order to motivate public and private financing, how do we make those measures more interesting for the businesses to scale up? Yeah.
Thank you. We won't talk about EUDR here, but I'm sure if anybody wants to talk about it on the margins, a few of us would be very happy to chat with you as we work through that. So, Meltem, I'll maybe turn it over to you to talk, unique to your part of the value chain, and for some countries they don't maybe understand the opportunity or maybe are very timber focused. What are some of the barriers that you see in terms of overcoming?
Okay. Yes, as I told before, the forests are very important. Nature is very important for our business because the herbal business, herbal medicine, herbal cosmetic, and food supplements business is growing every year. This means we need sources. Yes, some cultivation is essential, but also to protect the existing richness flora is also very important. Unfortunately, especially last year, we saw a lot of fires in the region, all Mediterranean region. We had dramatic fires. And this destroyed a lot of forests already in our country as well. So I think to find, of course, there is a climate change. We see the results every day. This winter was a lot of rain we had in our country, and it was the heat records were happened last summer. So this is obvious. Now, as you are an expert from the forestry organizations, I'm sure there will be found solutions. If there is a fire, how can we connect our power, our planes against forest fires, and to strengthen our equipments or human resources, and there must be some solutions, I am sure, to at least not to lose our existing richness about the nature. Then, of course, the second part will be how can we regenerate the forests which are already burned. Because, yes, this is a natural circulation. It happens. But now, this circulation is not as seldom as before. So the nature cannot find time to regenerate its national, its well-being, or let's say the health. So this is very important, I think, because as I said, we are using, I mean, in our country, we have forests of linden, we have forests of olive, we have forests of pistachio, we have forests of storax. These are not timber, these are all national remedies coming from the nature. So we have to protect them with the collaboration of all countries, neighborhood countries, strengthening our power to fight against the fires.
The fire piece is so critical. I think there's a lot of people in the audience today who can relate to this, and not only the impact that's, you know, it's the impact on human health. It's the carbon emissions in Canada. It's our #1 source of carbon emissions is fire now, and not to mention critical infrastructure, remote communities. In our country, Indigenous peoples who are disproportionately impacted by evacuations. And I think it's, you know, I know there's a few UN groups doing work on that, absolutely critical. I know working with, with countries like Portugal who've been big leaders in this space, so welcome that support and that dialogue. Maybe, Tina, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to come on stage. We're just going to wrap here. Are you? So listen. In summary, first of all, it's really hot up here. Like, it's hot down there, but it's really hot up here. So thank you. I'm glad nobody passed out. I'm glad everybody made it and is hydrated. But really excellent. Appreciate you making the time to be. Yeah. Did you want to add something? Yeah. Sure.
Hi. Thank you. In the opening video, there's a wooden satellite. And so we supported University of Kyoto by providing the Japanese big leaf magnolia, which is grown in our own company forest. So oftentimes forest is really like an old traditional, very native things, but there are so much of the high-tech things happening with the wood. So I'm really proud of that opening videos. Thank you for someone who made it.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, so I'll just, Tina will come up and, but listen, we're here. We've got a lot of great ideas. We've got a lot of experience to draw from. We're very diverse in where we come from in the value chain. We're talking to each other a lot across borders to understand and learn and try to do more. Feel free to reach out to us and our colleagues. I see Sylvia Meligari here from European Sawmills. There's a lot of us in the room today, so a pleasure to be here. Thanks for including us. We really appreciate it. And Tina, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek, and thank you for the panel. We'll let you sit down to the cooler side. Thank you.